I'm going to reconvene the meeting to order. I would ask that whoever is closest to the two back doors, if you would kindly shut the back doors to the assembly. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the November 28th Howell Township Council, Mayor and Council's regular agenda meeting. We actually began the meeting at 6:30 and went into executive session at that time. The time is now 8:05 p.m. We've already called the meeting to order and had the appropriate statements. I would ask that everyone please kindly rise for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would ask that everyone please remain standing for a moment of silent observation in thought of the troops that defend this country all over the world. Thank you. Call the council's attention to Article 4, acceptance of the minutes. Prior to doing that, I'd like to acknowledge and welcome Councilman-elect Howell, who was not at our last meeting, but welcome Mr. Howell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Article 4 to council, we have two different sets of minutes to be accepted. October 3, workshop and executive. October 17, regular and executive. I'd ask for a motion, please.
Motion to approve.
We need a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any remarks with respect to the minutes of these two meetings?
I will abstain on October 3rd because I was not present, Mayor.
All right, can we then please have two separate votes, one on October 3rd and one on October 17th?
I'll amend the motion to first approve the minutes of October 3.
We need a second?
Second.
I'd ask any remarks with respect to October 3. Hearing no remarks, roll call please on October 3.
Mr. Mulvey?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Abstain.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Motion and a second please on October 17.
So moved.
We need a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any remarks? Hearing no remarks, roll call please on October 17.
Mr. Mulvey?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, welcome. Ms. Dalton has also joined us, Councilwoman-elect Dalton. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mr. Cherniewski, Township Manager, for your report. Mr. Cherniewski, please.
Yes, Mayor, actually quite an extensive list of items. First of all, I'd like to report on a new program we've started this year for newly elected or re-elected council members. We had first of 4 orientation sessions last Friday with council members-elect Dalton and Howell and Mr. Walsh as well. We do have room for one additional council member without creating a open public meetings issue for us, but the orientation sessions are broken down by policy and service areas. We have 4 planned, and we have 1 behind us, and I feel it's going positively. And it's a new program, and it's something I hope to turn into a tradition here in Howell Township. I'm pleased to report that New Jersey DOT awarded us a $160,000 grant under the municipal aid program for the repaving of Yellowbrook Road. I'd like to acknowledge the engineering department for securing this grant, specifically Ms. Lisa Taylor for taking the initiative under Mr. Nunziato's direction. I would like to remind residents that portable basketball hoops are to be removed according to ordinance by November 30th, and they can go back up on March 31st. Mayor, 2 items from our last meeting. The first has to do with when we can meet to review the professional proposals that we are now accumulating. We had originally canceled the December 12th meeting, which was a public participation meeting, so we can prepare for reorganization. The recommendation now is that we reinstate the December 12th meeting for this process, and I would be interested in council's guidance with respect to this matter.
All right, are there any objections? As council will recall, last year we opened, or I should say we reviewed all of the opened received bids. We went through each proposal, discipline by discipline, narrowed down, came up with some finalists, and then directed the management staff to go back where appropriate. Any objections to December 12th? Any objections? Okay, December 12th. Go ahead, Mr. Janeski.
Time, 7 o'clock?
What's the pleasure of the council? Does that give us enough time? We have a pretty big list of stuff to go through. It does, enough time?
I'm not sure will ever be enough time to go through all of them in great detail, but we'll try to summarize it for you as best we can. So I think starting at 7 would give us enough time, but it's plan on a long evening.
All right, any objections to 7 o'clock?
I do have a question. Will Councilman Malave and Councilman Tabasco be reviewing them with us?
I will not be here.
Mr. Tabasco, do you plan on being here?
I'll, for now, I don't have my planner with me, but I plan on being here unless otherwise, you want my input is what you're asking for, Bob? On some of the people? I'll offer it,
I have no issue with it.
Just do it.
Okay, you have your direction. Go ahead, Mr. Janeski. Thank
Okay.
you.
The second item has to do with reorganization day. The traditional day for reorganization is January 1st at noon. Many towns schedule it for their first regular meeting, provided there's enough time to adopt a temporary budget. So there is the option of well as doing it on January 2nd, which is a Tuesday evening. And would like council's direction with respect to reorganization day and that of the council members-elect.
What's the pleasure of the council?
Depends if Notre Dame's playing on the 2nd, Tom. Okay?
Do you know that the Fighting Irish, when they got that name, most of the names ended in ski?
I didn't hear him. What did he say?
They were fighting Polish.
All right, so what's the pleasure of the meeting on January 1st? Is reorganization on January 1st?
I think Juan and I will abstain from this one.
Mr. Walsh?
Did Mike and Angela speak?
Of course.
Of course,
I
it's,
think that January 1st at noon it would be more appropriate. Everyone is off that day. It's a family day, and the members of the public won't have a hard time getting home from work to come and see us be sworn in. So I would appreciate if we kept it on January 1st at noon.
yeah, I think that was the plan. Why was this even a question?
We just, we polled some council members, couldn't get a hold of others, so we just wanted to clarify it this evening.
Like Christmas.
So it sounds like you have your direction on the 1st. Is there a meeting on January 2nd?
No, sir.
I guess is the next, so there's no meeting on the 2nd?
Correct.
Okay. What's next, Mr. C?
Okay. With respect to the agenda, we are pulling introduction of ordinance 9B.
9B?
Hold on, give me a second.
Oh, okay.
9A4, you said?
984, sorry.
Amending the bond ordinance for capital equipment, 9A4?
Correct.
We're pulling that?
Correct.
Pull it.
Okay.
Pulling
Okay.
that. We're pulling 9B 47 on the, that's on the add-on list.
Okay.
Okay. 9B 34, we're going to move that to the workshop on December 5th. That's not it's on a consent agenda. That's really not a routine matter. We need some discussion on that.
Say that 9B34 you're doing what with now?
We're moving that to the workshop on the 5th.
IMB 34.
Also, just a couple points of interest, things that I know have been important to the council. I want to point out that we are awarding the contract to purchase the lake dredger this evening. And I would also, so that's under, that's on the add-on list. And also on the agenda, 9B35, there's a resolution that was requested by the county so they can start planning to do their end of the improvements for the Pop Warner pedestrian improvements. Okay. Okay, that's agenda items. Mayor, next I'm going to turn my attention to a number of traffic safety issues. Before I get into that, I would like to have a discussion on Memorial Drive, which is the new road that we have built.
The hidden view.
Go right ahead.
into Hidden View, correct. There's been some difficulty in communicated to us by JCP&L in obtaining easements. And without those easements, they haven't been able to install the lights. So we purposely have not opened that road, thinking that that was just around the corner. When we inquired further, we found out that they were having difficulties. We're working with them to straighten that out. However, I did secure letters from the police department and the engineer, the consulting engineer who worked on the project, indicating that we can proceed with opening that road. At this point, the road is being used for recreational purposes. It wasn't designed for that. It is a hazard, and it is our recommendation that, and all I would need is a motion from council to authorize us to open Memorial Drive at this point.
You want that motion this very second?
Well, before you get to that, I guess the observation I would have is, I think that we should simultaneously then close the other roads that were intended to be closed once Memorial was opened. So I'd be curious as to what temporary
Redbud,
measures,
Cherry.
Redbud and Pine Needle, what temporary measures can we take to have them closed until such time as whatever the permanent measure of having them closed can be installed?
Well, the guidance I received from the, in asking the police department about the lighting, wasn't a major concern. I think our major concern had to do with the kids playing on Memorial Drive. So the measures we can take include putting up barrels, maybe a single lane closure with the Jersey barrier and then additional barrels so trucks can't get through, but it would provide enough room for an ambulance, if need be, to get in through that entrance.
I guess the only concern that we would have, and we heard this from fire and emergency rescue, was that whatever measures have to be able to be driven over, if you will, by an ambulance or a fire truck.
Right.
So would they be able to get through these temporary concerns?
Mayor, if you would allow me to just research that a little bit and report back to you at the workshop with respect to the closure of Redbud, but perhaps consider acting on the opening of Memorial. I'd get back to you next week after I had a chance to talk with the police department some more.
Could we do two things? Could we, council's pleasure, direct you to, in fact, open Memorial and simultaneously give you approval to proceed in closing the other roads, provided you can come up with a satisfactory means of temporarily closing them? Would that be appropriate?
That's fine.
All right, then I'd ask someone to please put that in the form of a motion.
Can I ask a question, please, first?
Let's just open it up for debate. Let's get that motion in a second, and then we'll go for comments and questions after you do that. So is there a motion?
So moved.
You have a second?
Second, Mayor.
Open for discussion. Mr. Walsh.
What will we do about the sidewalks? There's no lights. What are we going to do during snow? Plow the road and leave the sidewalks covered? What are we going to do?
We currently do not, my understanding is we do not shovel any sidewalks in the township.
That's correct.
I'm just wondering, I think I'm responsible to shovel the sidewalk in front of my house, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I don't do it, somebody else does, but, okay, let's not get carried away here, but, so we have a half-mile stretch of road almost with
That-
no lights
Is it
and
a-
no
about a half mile?
sidewalks?
Right. My understanding is that wouldn't be the only one in town.
That would or would not?
Would not.
Would not. Yeah, there's many township-owned roads where,
Okay,
are we shoveling the sidewalks on all the township-owned roads?
None.
I don't believe we're, aside from municipal facilities, we're not shoveling any sidewalks.
Mr. Nunziato,
Never
do we in fact have sidewalks to township owns?
The township only maintains the sidewalks, let's say, at the police station, library, township property, the buildings that we own. But other than that, we do not maintain or shovel any sidewalks in the roadways.
In roadways that the town otherwise owns?
Correct. So we do not. This would be setting a precedent if we were to
It'd be
shovel
pretty
this
expensive to
more.
start shoveling them all, I guess.
Yes.
It would. Okay.
I'm just questioning for safety reasons, with there being no lights there and sidewalks.
Are there other roads, Mr. Chinesky, that don't have, would this be the first road in the town that doesn't have lights?
No.
No.
There's many that don't have lights?
Correct.
Okay.
Probably most of them.
Probably most don't. I thought that was the case. I wasn't sure. Any other comments or issues?
Question, Mr.
Go ahead,
Mayor,
Mr.
if I
Malabi.
may. Mr. C, I believe the memo I received last week from you, I think recommended that we simultaneously keep that Bud Road or Bud Lane Road open until such time that the lights are fully up and running on Memorial Drive. So what changed from that memorandum to tonight that now we're considering closing Bud Lane?
Again, in my, what I would ask, council's given me authorization to close it, but I would ask you to offer me till the 5th to make a definitive decision and to explore that a little further.
Okay?
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Are there any additional remarks? Are there, Mr. Chinesky, I guess the only other concern, and I called your office on it, several of us got emails and phone calls about it. Just to be clear, at some point, all those other roads will be permanently closed. That has not changed, correct?
That's the plan.
Okay. Just several members of the public had called Town Hall and had heard different variations of that. All right, are there any additional remarks? All right, hearing none, roll call, please. Yes, please.
This is just to...
This is yes to opening Memorial Drive and having Mr. Chinesky report back on the 5th as to what measures can be taken if it's safe to close out the other roads short-term.
Okay, Mr. Malabai?
Yes.
Mr. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. What else, Mr. Chinesky?
Okay.
Actually, Tom, before you go on to that report, I noticed in your report on the add-ons tonight, I see what was given to us. There's a 9B51, which isn't listed. That was the Brinkerhoff Environmental add-on piece. That should be there, correct?
That's correct.
All right, I'd ask the council, just on their add-ons to the Deputy Mayor's point, just jot down 9B51. It's the contract to approve environmental drinking water standards and the safety review for Brinkerhoff Associates for the Tittenfall area residents.
You may proceed.
Go ahead, Mr. Chinesky.
Okay. Mayor, since starting about 9 months ago, I think every council meeting we've had has had a request for some sort of a traffic calming, traffic management program. And I had made the comment at the last meeting that I think what really needs to happen is we sort of need to grow in terms of how we deal with these issues to reflect our size. And I think what I'm definitely recommending at this point and ask council to think about is a policy, so that residents know where to go and have a clear understanding of how their requests for any sort of traffic calming or neighborhood traffic management can be addressed. What we've done is collected 4 or 5 different policies that communities our size are implementing. And this would sort of eliminate the process of residents coming before the council and requesting something very specific and put a process in place. So what I've done this evening is distributed a draft for you to review. I'm just going to hit on the major points, but we're going to get into it in greater detail at our workshop on the 5th. But I thought it would be appropriate to just point out the broad strokes of what the policy ought to contain in advance of hearing from our police department with respect to 3 specific projects or requests. Okay, currently, we take a case-by-case approach at council meetings. I don't think it's very effective or efficient. Again, the policy level approach, a policy level approach is recommended for council involvement. So, in other words, the complaints from residents would be requesting you to adjust your policy and not a specific road concern. We get the complaints that we receive. Residents are requesting a reduction in cut-through traffic and volumes in neighborhoods and speeds, and also are asking to better accommodate multiple transportation uses such as pedestrians and bicycles. The goal of the policy is not this. I think council needs to make a very strong statement that roads are not designed for recreational purposes, And if traffic calming requests are coming before us for this purpose, it's utterly inappropriate to do that. And not that this activity is wrong, but the primary mission of roads is to move vehicles in a safe way, and we always need to bear that in mind, and we have parks for recreational purposes. Now, this can happen under the guidance of families, and there are many responsible families who do this, but it is not the purpose and basis for having a policy to do traffic calming. It's to accommodate multiple transportation uses, be it pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. My observations have been that residents are frustrated with cut-through traffic and speeds. Police, I find, and it's a morale issue that we need to be concerned about, but they're concerned about dangerous, inappropriate use of traffic management devices. There's disagreements between perceived and demonstrated problems. There's conflicts among neighbors over what the best solutions are. And then oftentimes, actually all the time, we've never actually budgeted for many of the solutions that are being requested. And in the end, it makes us look as if we can't address pressing needs in our community. So I think a policy will help us guide that and will help us budget for it and plan for it, I think in a more peaceful way. What the policy you have in front of you, it provides guidelines for how to request a study, how needs will be documented, how strategies will be identified, how neighborhood support will be obtained. So it gives specific guidance for how to do a petition, how many numbers we're looking for, how we would hold a neighborhood meeting to look at strategies, and then how we would poll the residents in the affected neighborhoods on whether or not they support what we're proposing for the affected area. It explains how projects will be designed, and then, of course, there's the ongoing evaluation of whether or not they're safe or effective. And then how we can better use enforcement when calming is not an option. The policy provides Phase 1 strategies, which can easily be implemented and are often very effective. This includes making sure the road is properly striped and marked, portable radar units, a neighborhood speed watch program, and then creating what is called a high enforcement zone, where physical speed calming measures are not appropriate because the road would be perhaps an emergency vehicle route. So where there might actually be a problem, it would be not appropriate to line with speed bumps if ambulances and fire engines must get down that road and then branch out to many, many other residents. Phase 2 strategies you've seen many times. They include use of medians, pedestrian safety islands, road narrowing, we call chokers or neck downs, speed humps, tables, raised crosswalks, raised intersections, traffic circles. And again, all these would be subject to polling of the neighborhood. You might have read in a paper where a neighboring community installed these specific devices and then had to yank them out because the neighbors didn't support it. So this policy provides us a way of even protecting these investments should we make them, by making sure the public's involved. Again, just some more of the physical option 2 or phase 2 options we can explore. Intersection realignments, and you'll be hearing a little bit about that this evening. Permanent stationary radar signs. And then finally, what the policy contains is an explanation of what the 85th percentile actually means. See the mayor glaring at me. It's come up a lot. There's been requests for speed reductions, and so this notion of the 85th percentile has come up again and again. And whether you agree with it or not, I think it's important to have an explanation of it in our policy. And basically, it is actually designed and used nationally, and studies have shown that when you don't use it, the 85th percentile, you actually increase accidents. So there will be an article contained in a policy explaining that, so residents understand this before they request a speed reduction as well. So having said that, Before we get into responding to some of the individual issues that residents have raised, that I think our police department has done a fine job exploring, and they'll be giving you a recommendation tonight, I wanted to just give you in broad strokes what the policy contains, and we'll get into greater detail on the 5th.
Any questions for Mr. Czerniewski before he calls up the chief? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Czerniewski.
I think, can I say something?
Go right ahead.
I think this is outstanding to put a policy in place, so the governing body and citizens of Howell know where to go, how to address it. I mean, are you working in conjunction with the police department and putting this policy in place?
Yes.
I think it's an outstanding draft. I was reading it a little bit earlier.
Do you want our comments in advance of the next workshop? Because I made a couple of notes. How would you like us to proceed?
Yeah, we'll workshop it, we'll dedicate some time, we'll get into the specifics. But I think for the benefit of the public, that I know a good proportion of them are here to hear about traffic safety, I wanted to explain where we're moving in broad terms.
I agree, and we appreciate you putting this together. Go ahead, Mr. Jansky, you going to call the chief?
Okay, I'll call Sergeant Markulik at this time.
Evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening, Sergeant.
Which way would you like to start off? Okay, we were asked to do some work on Tinton Falls Road to determine some issues regarding speeding vehicles, commercial vehicles, and this is what the complaint was all about. Increase in commercial vehicle traffic, increase in passenger vehicle traffic, increase in speeding violations, and an increase in noise due to speeding commercial trucks, and also safety concerns for children. Requests that were made was to eliminate commercial vehicle traffic on the roadway, check for adequate signage, strict speed enforcement, any other traffic calming solutions, and some residential factors that we found. There's approximately 18 homes situated on Tinton Falls Road, 2 commercial businesses located on the roadway. Speed reduces from 45 to 25, approximately 750 feet from Asbury Road. The roadway surface is concrete with expansion joints creating majority of the noise. Most of the residents are on board with the complaint. Our evaluation from the traffic unit is the road is old, it's concrete surface, and needs repaving or paving. Vehicles that are traveling even at a slow rate, especially commercial trucks, it's real noisy with the expansion joints, especially if they are empty. There's over 1,200 vehicles traveling this roadway on a daily average. There's a high crash history at the intersection of Route 33, 34 and Tinton Falls Road.
By the Apollo Diner?
Yes. A majority are occurring at the cars coming off of 33, 34 onto Tinton Falls Road.
Excuse me, Sergeant Markwood, could you speak into the microphone a little more?
Sorry about that.
We got the TV gods let us know they're not picking you up.
There's also heavy commercial vehicle travel, and it does increase the noise when they are empty. Our evaluation continued. 90% of the vehicles are over 40 miles per hour in a 25 zone. It's really hard to see, but this is just an overview of Tinton Falls Road. It's right here. This is Tinton Falls Road coming off of 33, 34. Some options that are available to us: speed humps, limit commercial vehicle traffic, impose a one-way on Tinton Falls Road, either north or south. And some recommendations from our unit would be to reconfigure the intersection of Route 33 and Tinton Falls Road. Pave the entire roadway from 33, 34 to the pavement just north of Asbury Road. Paint 25 mile per hour markings on the roadway northbound lane, just once you enter the 25 mile per hour zone. And add 2 sets of rumble strips just north of Asbury Road. giving people the warning that you're coming into a residential area. There's no homes that would be affected by noise or anything like that. Leave access into the Apollo Diner as you're traveling north on Tinton Falls. Leave two-way travel in the residential area. And speed humps would not be permitted due to the 85th percentile speed and the roads connecting to state and county roads. Limiting truck traffic is almost near impossible. It's just, with the businesses there, it'd be impossible for us to enforce. We'd have to stop, follow them, see where they're going, and it's just almost impossible.
Do either of those businesses have access off of 33 or off of Asbury Road?
The one does, the other one closer to Ruckle does not at this time. There has been some talks, but that would have to be for engineering or the township to explore that a little bit further.
Because if that second one did somehow come up with access, then we could stop commercial vehicles from going.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. The proposal for 3334, like I said, it's just a proposal. Block off 3334 with some kind of island barrier, curbing, leave access to the Apollo Diner, vehicles traveling northbound, and put some kind of island barrier here so the cars cannot make a right, and that would leave the residents still able to go back and forth into Farmingdale or throughout the township. And it would definitely limit a lot of vehicles coming off and hopefully eliminate our crash history there. Any questions?
Questions from the council on these recommendations?
A lot of those are good. It's going to get worse in about 6-7 months when they start redesigning that circle further to the east, because a lot of traffic will want to avoid the traffic, and then it'll start cutting down, going south on Tinton Falls Road to get to Asbury Road. So we need to do something soon.
Yeah, one question is how quickly, and this is probably for Mr. Czerniecki, your engineering, if we were to accept all these recommendations, how quickly can they be executed?
We would need to look at, I believe we've exhausted our road improvement budget for the year, so we would need to look at maybe some older ordinances to see if we can pull some money together. We need to get estimates first. And on top of that, we also need to get DOT approval. So we can work on DOT approval while we try to identify the funds. If the funds aren't there, we can handle it through the 2007 capital budget process.
Sergeant, do you anticipate the DOT would have any objections to this? Is there anything out of the ordinary here?
One of my patrolmen contacted the state, and actually they did recommend something like this, so it seems like they would be okay. We would just have to go do all the proper paperwork and, adopt it, and hopefully they would agree to it.
Any other questions from the council? Mr. Malabi, we'll start with you.
I don't at this time. no.
Okay, Mr.
So
DeBasco?
I just want to be clear, that one business only has access from either Ruckle or Ellis Roads. That's,
I don't know if Ellis does, but I know Ruckle they do, and that's the only one I know of. I was, as you can tell with the pictures, I was looking at accesses in the back along the railroad track, and I didn't see anything that would really be feasible. I don't know if the township knows differently, but I didn't see any.
I didn't see any either. I drove around the property and didn't note any. I would note one other thing, that it was pointed out to me that there's a fairly extensive accident rate at that intersection, which ties up a good deal of our time. So this would also be an investment in savings in police time, which can be used elsewhere.
well, probably a lot of it has to do with people coming south on 34 and cutting across 2 lanes of traffic coming off 33 to make their right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's exactly right. Mrs. Showmaker, any questions?
No
Comments? Mr. Walsh?
We're coming south on 34, you're not supposed to go right at that intersection, isn't that no right
But they
turn?
do it anyway.
Depends on who you talk to in the state about that sign.
There is a sign there that says no right turn though, correct?
There is. Most people say it's for the diner, though.
No right turn into the diner, but go right into the street. All right.
If you pulled someone over there, could you give them a ticket?
You could try and see what happens in court, but a lot of time, we've been having conflicting stories for,
Is
probably
it,
since police department has been there.
does it make sense on this score that maybe through the chief or the manager, we put a formal letter to the DOT and ask them for written clarification so that We know, the chief's laughing, I'm sure he's done it 100 times, but, and they don't write back?
Depends on who you talk to.
Well, what would the police department's recommendation be? Should you be able to make a right-hand turn?
I want to say no, just because all the accidents, I mean,
Well, if that were the case,
sign should be for a roadway,
Then-
not a business.
I agree with you. If that's the case, perhaps either through the chief or the manager, we can send a letter and indicate we've got some ambiguities. Our recommendation is this, we've gotten conflicting information, and we're going to do it this way unless you tell us otherwise. Can we do that?
We can write that letter, try again.
Okay.
Could I ask also, we do have a study done about our roads with paving. Could you please look into where Tinton Falls Road falls in that report, Mr. Shinsky?
Yes. Let me just, I just want to clarify one item that Sergeant Mark Kulik spoke about. The road is currently made of concrete, and it generates a great deal of noise. I understand from speaking with the residents that that's not necessarily a concern for them at this point. It's just a recommendation for reducing the noise. So I don't want to create any anxieties in the neighborhood that we're going to do this immediately. However, I think it's important to state that we don't do that anymore. We don't build roads from concrete. We do all asphalt. So when that road does come up, it will be an asphalt road.
Okay.
Any other?
I still have, it still doesn't sit right with me that there's no other access for that one business other than to go down Ellis or Ruckle, which are really residential streets. So if we can entertain having them come in and meet maybe in the town hall with you, Tom, and somebody else, is there possibly access into the other business to then to 33 or to Tinton Falls Road rather than down those streets? And then we have an easement situation, maybe we can have everybody agree to try to create a win-win, because that is absolutely the best solution, to get them off those local roads, and then we just shut down Tinton Falls Road to commercial vehicles.
The only feasible way would probably come off Asbury Road and right along the, the railroad tracks. But you would have to,
Is that where the other business exits?
That is, I guess that, as you're aware, getting easements and getting property owners to cooperate is a difficult thing. So I think as a first phase, what's
They
being...
probably want to be good neighbors, it doesn't hurt to ask.
Doesn't hurt to ask. But I think this, if implemented, will have a real positive impact on quality of life in the Tinton Falls Road neighborhood.
That's it.
I'd like, unless the council disagrees, show of hands, who here is from Tinton Falls that wants to hear on this issue? Okay. I'd like to recognize these folks and have them come up while our professionals and police are still here on this particular question. Why don't you folks come on up, and we'll recognize you. Just the three of you folks want to be heard on this? 4? Anyone else on Tinton Falls? All right, so we'll hear from 5. Anyone else? All right, so we're going to hear from those 5 people. Why don't you folks come on up? If you don't mind, just please introduce yourself, give us your name and address, welcome, and we'd be delighted to help answer any of your questions and get your feedback. You can come up, Mr. Costigan, whatever you like.
Mr. and Mrs. Joseph George, 61 Tinton Falls Road.
Nice to see you again, Mrs. George.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't you start off, Mrs. George?
Looks like you guys got a good plan going on here, but there are a couple of questions that we do have. If you guys have to go to the DOT to have this intersection reconfigured, what would it take to just have the end of the road there closed with going to the state? I believe that if we close that end of Tinton Falls Road, the trucks would still be able to come down, like he's saying, off Asbury Road, but I believe it would be less costly. We wouldn't have to pave the road. You'd have less police presence. You'd have all the things that, you're talking about, reduce the traffic, you'd basically eliminate it. It would just be local traffic. Right, by closing that off at 34.
That's what we're proposing, closing it off, coming off of 33, 34.
But
And
you're
then
still
all
making-
vehicles would have to go to Asbury.
But you're still making it a one-way road for them to go out the other way.
Well, for you to go out.
But the
You
residents will
still-
be able to go both ways, though, not just one way.
Okay.
But what about the other people? Sorry,
It's okay, just speak into the mic and just introduce yourself.
Robin DeCorso, Joe Brisky, 63 Tinton Falls Road.
Okay, welcome. What was your question? Go ahead.
What, the question is, I'm totally lost now.
It's okay.
No, other people, they will still be able, the trucks will still be able to come out the other way. Is that what you're saying? See, closing the road, that would be easier to determine what trucks belong on the road if that only access to Ruckel, and that one business that can only go down Ruckel, there's no access to Ellis Ave. It's just Ruckel.
Right,
Sergeant?
it'd be just like the
Then you would
local
know,
truck traffic.
obviously, they would be turning into there, so it would just be the businesses that are there for the trucks to be on that road, and we don't have a problem with that. We're not trying to tell them to stay off the road. It's everybody else in town that's using the road.
Okay.
Right, until we could figure out another access for that business, there's really no way we could limit the trucks. We're going to cut it by, closing the road off, entering 33, 34, so hopefully that would limit the trucks wanting to make a right onto Tinton Falls, and hopefully it would just be the business that would be going down the road. You may have an occasional commercial truck traveling north, but I still think it's going to be better, closing it off than it is now.
But them going north is what's going to make them cut across over to 33, 34.
Exactly.
And you won't have to reconstruct the whole 34 circle because it will be used for what it's supposed to be
Intended
used for.
Right, when people are still accessing 34 from Farmingdale, they're still going to want to cut across to the
They're still
middle
going to cut across.
to go, down 34 towards Folsom.
Right, we understand that, but I don't think there's any other way.
We're just saying that closing that road altogether, access to 34, would totally eliminate a really dangerous intersection.
Absolutely.
And it won't cost anything.
But the trucks that need to use the road would still have access from the Farmingdale direction to their businesses.
May I also make one other point, too?
Sure.
There's an awful lot of congestion that backs up in the morning waiting to get out onto 33, 34 from Tinton Falls.
Yep.
And we have kids that are going around cars to get on the bus, that are sitting, edging up in traffic.
Well, everything you're bringing up is definitely points that need to be taken into consideration, because it would eliminate everything you're talking about. So we'll have them
Sergeant,
look
do you
at
have
it.
any comments on Mrs. George's observation?
It probably will stay the same it is now, traffic-wise, backing up. Maybe a little bit worse when they start to construction at the circle, hopefully for a little while. But that's something that
But to her point about closing the road altogether,
I just
Is that
think it's going to
doable?
be, I think it's just going to be more of a hassle for, the residents. It's going to affect the residents more than anything,
What residents?
residents of Howell Township.
Oh, of Howell, not just, not us. But you mean because they won't have a place to cut through anymore?
Oh, it is a cut-through road.
Like they'd be
No.
forced to use the circle.
Yeah,
Okay,
they
before
still would be able
it's
to
not
go
like they don't
down
have any
Asbury
access. And I,
from the circle.
and
And
am I
then you're
wrong?
cutting
Are you-
off,
Are you putting a light on, what's the road? Not Cranberry, Colts Neck Road. You're putting a light to 33 there, right?
there is a light that is intended to go in there from the state.
So people can still go down that road. They could cut up Cranberry, and they can make the right, and they won't have to worry about cutting onto 33 there to make the right to go to Collinswood
That's
or
very
wherever
good.
they
That's
go.
a good point.
Because there's going to be a light there.
That's a good point. Mr. Chinesky, you have a comment?
I truly sympathize with the residents because the homes are so close to the road, and it does impact the current traffic volumes do impact the quality of life. I think what's being proposed is, we're sort of trying to measure it in terms of what can we realistically plan to do as a traffic improvement in some reasonable time frame. I think to completely close off access would be one, perhaps more difficult to get approval for at the DOT. But given the volume counts that I was told, I don't think it would be responsible for us to sort of guess at what the effect might be. I think what we really need is a circulation plan or at least a localized circulation study to know how that traffic would be dispersed throughout the town. And I don't think any of us here are really qualified to do that at this time. But I would hate to see us move a problem from one place to another place without really making life better as a whole in the community.
Would it make sense that we attempt to implement what you're talking about here, which certainly isn't permanent? It's not as if we're constructing something, measure it over a period of time, gauge the impact that it has, and then revisit this in, say, 4 or 5 months and determine whether or not the impact has proved what it was intended to do?
Right, and again, I truly sympathize, and I always fall on the, try to fall on the side of the quality of life in the neighborhood. But what we don't have in our community, unfortunately, and I know, we've been, in terms of planning, we've been doing our due diligence with the reexamination and COA, but what we really need is a circulation element in our master plan. that can look at all these questions in a kind of a scientific way, so we know exactly what the impacts are going to be. So just, as the manager, I would tell you, I'd be uncomfortable, recommending that we do a full closure at this time. Really for two reasons. One, I'm not sure DOT would approve it, so it would delay what we think DOT will approve. And secondly, we don't know what impact it's going to have on the whole community.
All right, so your recommendation could be to put these residents at ease. Can we implement this and revisit it, have another report from the police department in, say, 3 or 4 months after this has been executed to determine if, in fact, additional measures can be taken? Is that an appropriate way to proceed?
I think we need a traffic planner. All due respect to the traffic safety unit, we need an engineer who, they have the software and they can do the modeling of how traffic flows in the community, and I'm not sure we have the capacity in-house to do that.
Our engineering department couldn't do that?
No.
We had some specialists from Remington and Bernick present like a year ago, Rick something or other.
All right, is it at least the pleasure of the council to proceed on these preliminary recommendations from the police so that we can have the manager and the CFO attempt to identify some funds that might immediately be available so they can start getting the ball in motion? Does anyone disagree with at least getting this
Well, he
started?
presented about 9 or 10 recommendations, all with various levels of cost. So which one of those would you prioritize first? I think we need to have that broken down.
I think what Tom said, he's got to get us some cost. So I think what they want to find out is, do you agree with these recommendations? And if you do, you will canvass what the potential expenses will be, come back to us, and then we can determine where we can afford to pay for these. Is that right?
Exactly, what are the recommendations, Sergeant McCullough?
Why don't you go back? It's in his presentation.
I saw it, but we're not going to pay because it's cement.
Not yet.
Okay, that was in his presentation.
Speed humps which don't work.
Speed humps
don't
wouldn't
work.
fit.
Which of the, which of the...
Honestly, if we could implement just that right-hand turn, just getting rid of that right hand to see how that's going to facilitate quiet and slowing down the road, that's a start right there.
That's a
And
big
it's-
start.
It's a big start. I think that'll have a huge impact on.
Is
how-
that one that can be executed immediately?
Bring up all 9 again in a...
Bring them back up, but as you're calling that up, to Mr. George's point, is that one that could be done immediately? The right-hand turn?
As long as we could, get all the paperwork done, give it to DOT and they approve it,
Even if you had a temporary, breakaway barriers or something like that, something inexpensive, just so we can test the water before we dive in.
So what are the specific recommendations you'd like us to act on or consider?
He's bringing them up now.
Yep.
While he's doing that, I just want to point out that getting approval,
If you remember, getting approval for DOT to do the closures off of Route 9 was an absolute nightmare because they have such few inspectors. So I'm very hesitant to give a timeline as to when DOT is going to approve
Can I give you
anything.
my perspective on that? Let's just do it and have the state come down here and take it down. And if they have a problem with it, then they can tell us not to do it, or they can call Mr. and
Thank you.
Mrs. George.
I'll be happy.
So I really don't-
I'll talk to him.
I'm not all that, I mean, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I don't really, with all due respect to the state DOT, if we wait for the state like we did for the Ramtown Water Company, we'd still be waiting.
Sure.
We're all
I- it-
constituents out here.
It's just
Yeah.
important for us to do our due diligence and at least be on record as having stuff into them.
Okay.
Sure.
Agreed.
The recommendation I would like to see effective, as soon as possible, would be the reconfiguring 3334 in Tinton Falls, so no access, right-hand turn off of 3334 onto Tinton Falls. We could hold off on the paving, 25 mile per hour
That seems
markings
inexpensive
painted
enough.
on the northbound lane once you hit the 25 mile per hour zone.
That's a good one.
That would have to be,
I think
if we do it now, that would have to be in like black paint since it's a white concrete roadway. Rumble strips, I could go further if it is approved, where we could put them, but it would be just north of Asbury Road, right where the reduced sign for the speed limit is, and then a little bit farther down, gives people the awareness that, hey, we're coming into a residential area, and there is no homes that would be affected. Leave access to the Apollo Diner. I would like to see that because it is a business in town, and a lot of residents do travel down that roadway to patronize them. And then also leave the access for the residents to go both ways so they're not affected in their daily life. And no speed humps because the speeds are too high for putting them,
Paint in the
you
barrier.
know, and then also it connects to state and county roads.
All right, so next steps, unless anyone disagrees, or the next steps, Mr. Chinesky, you'll profile the specific recommendations we just got, come back to us with expected cost. How soon can you do that much?
Probably by the 19th, I can have some.
By December 19th?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, folks? You have any other questions or
Yeah, I
comments?
did talk to the county at one point, and I spoke with a lady named Trudy, who had said that there are funding for townships regarding traffic, but you'd have to go to her and you'd have to apply, but the county does honor that for the township. So if the township doesn't have the money, you could go there, if they approve on whatever. So, I mean, like, that was another one of the things that I have said.
Mr. Chinesky, is there county grant money that we're not aware of that we should be?
Mr. Corso told me about this, and it's on my to-do list to reach out.
So we're going to check that out, and if it's there, we're going to at least apply for it?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so it's the pleasure of the council, just to be certain, that we're going to ask the manager to prepare getting these recommendations together and get the cost and start the ball rolling?
I think we heard three, the rumble strips, the paint, and the barrier.
Recommendations you've recommended?
Yes.
Any other comments from the council?
No.
Okay.
Could I ask you one other question?
Go right ahead, ma'am.
Since the majority of
You
the
can-
streets
come on.
in Howell are state and county, so why can't the state be called in as help with the truck traffic and determine who should be there and who shouldn't be there?
Sergeant?
They rely on the police department because they're so shorthanded. They got basically 5 guys that work the whole state, so they push everything on us, and then we give them the paperwork, and they agree or disagree.
Okay.
Thanks, folks. Mr. Costigan, you want to comment on this? Go ahead, sir.
John Costigan, 214 Birdsall Road.
Yes, sir.
I don't live on Tinton Falls Road, but I'm in the area a lot, and it's a
You're
very
not cutting through, are you?
You know what? I go around, but that's not much better. That whole complex by the Apollo, the state came in several years ago and probably did nothing more than repave it, instead of ripping the whole thing down and making it where everybody could live. It's so dangerous. There are people that come up by the Apollo, up Tinton Falls Road, try to cut across to get onto that little U-turn to go north, and everybody and their mothers coming from both sides. It's an accident. It's many accidents waiting to happen. So is that what the state is straightening out, or is it the circle farther up, a mile up?
Circle
Right.
farther
Well,
up.
they should rip that whole thing down and start from everything. And coming off Asbury Road, even when you get to that circle, I'm hoping the state does a good job where it is fixing it. Because when you come off there, you might be able to make a right onto Asbury Road there, but boy, you have people in the right lane trying to get across to go 33, and people in the left lane trying to go down 34. That's it's all dangerous.
It's a nightmare.
So, but
Nobody
if the
knows what
state is
lane
going
to
to
be
do
in.
that, maybe we should try and ask the state to please fix the area by the Apollo Diner. You guys, I mean, I go 20, when I'm there, I'm 25 miles an hour because I'm respectful of your area. It's a very rough
you.
area.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if I do go north on it, there are people behind me like very mad at me because I go my 25.
We know.
And, you know.
We've got flipped off many a time.
So I guess I don't want to be long-winded. I think maybe if someone could implore the state to clean that place up. It was probably created by the state because Tinton Falls Road probably went right across at one time.
Probably.
And then the state's highways came in and started bisecting it.
Yeah, I believe
And
that's
it's
what it was.
dangerous. And then you have now the storage facility on the other side. And I was hearing the planning board asking them to make sure there was no entrance right off that U-turn, because that'd be dangerous too with the oncoming traffic. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Costigan.
Thank you, Mr. Costigan.
All right, I think, do you want an official, you want a roll call on this, Mr. Chinesky, from the council? What do you want right now?
A motion would be great, so for when we submit
Okay.
to,
All right, I'd ask a member of the council make a motion.
Motion to accept the recommendations from Officer Markulik and have Tom investigate as to cost and come back to us on December 19.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second, Mayor.
Any additional remarks? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Malavey?
Yes.
Mr. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, thank you, Sergeant.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you all.
Appreciate your patience.
We have two more.
We have two more. Okay, what's next, Mr. Chinesky?
Wyckoff Road.
Wyckoff Road, okay?
Again?
All right, what do we have on Wyckoff?
Okay, Wyckoff Road. Received 2 RTC complaints due to the increase in speeding vehicles. The request, traffic calming signs, drive slowly or other similar signs, and also traffic calming devices, rumble strips or other recommendations. Reduce the speed limit to 35 miles per hour the entire roadway. Our traffic evaluation, minimal crash history, no pedestrian crashes in the area of the crosswalk of the villages. The roadway is used for vehicles traveling to Route 9 Strickland Park and Ride and towards Howell 5 Points Road. Minimum pedestrian crosswalk usage, and the roadway is posted 35 from Route 9 northbound to just past the villages, where it turns into 40 miles per hour, up to 524. The residential factors, there's only 5 homes spread out along the roadway. No current complaints from the homeowners. Some options that could be available: reduce the speed limit the entire length, implement traffic calming devices and signs, and our recommendations is to place 2 rumble strips once you come off of Route 9 northbound, and this will give the drivers notice that it is a slower speed. Just south of the gas station that's there and just north of the gas station. And then place 2 more on the southbound lane of travel, just once you enter the 35 mile per hour zone, and shortly thereabouts the entrance of the park and ride.
Both those make sense.
And there's no residence that would be affected by noise. We'd put it far enough away from that first residence near the park and ride.
And these would be permanent.
And no recommendation in changing the speed limit. There is no crash history. There is no residential complaints. It is mostly a rural road. Most of our accidents do occur on 524 near the post office. But hopefully in the next couple of years, they're going to eliminate that post office and move it south a little bit on a piece of property there. I was talking to the management there. So hopefully in a few years, that would be corrected.
All right, questions from the council?
Actually, not so much a question, but a statement. I think one of the better solutions would be, of course, for the county and Freehold Township to finish off the 9 bypass where Edinburgh Road hits the light there and make that 4 lanes again. And it goes all the way back to like a 1996 timeframe where that was supposed to be finished and still isn't, right through the Adelphia Greens neighborhood, where one half's on Freehold Township, the other half's on Howell. But that was supposed to be 4 lanes all the way up and around, all the way up to where Staples and Best Buy is, and they never finished that piece. So we were told years ago that the county kind of backed away, leaving it in Freehold Township's hands to finish it off, and they've just sat on it all these years. So if we can get in touch with them and maybe light a fire as to get that done, all that traffic that goes off Wyckoff, I'd say probably 80% of it will wind up going on Edinburgh Road and up north that way rather than taking Wyckoff, and then you would have very minimal traffic issues on Wyckoff.
We'll look into that.
Just real quick, I just got a picture here just showing where I think the rumble strip should go, and then also on the other side.
The rumble strips.
That's not my time.
By the
That's
parking
what
lot,
I want to know,
2
because
sets.
we had other
And that'll give, one that
areas.
you're in the 35 mile per hour zone.
So where your hand is now, if you go to the top left corner, Edinburgh, if you go to the top left corner, it is right over there. I mean, they would go past Strickland and make the right on that and take that instead of Wyckoff.
Mrs. Schirmaker, you have a question?
If we've had no residential complaints, why are we concerning ourselves with this road, number 1? And number 2, will the rumble strips be a permanent? Will they be there permanently, or is that a temporary thing?
They're basically just painted on a roadway, and the complaint came from a resident in the villages.
Any other questions from the council? Mr. Malave?
No, I think if, as I recall, the most, or the biggest complaint from the residents and the villages was the amount of trucks going on that road. I believe that they wanted to try and eliminate truck access on that road. I don't think that speeding was as much of a complaint, or at least I don't recall it that way. But the report clearly states that, very little problems occur on that road, other than, occasional speed or something, but I don't know. I think the strips is a good start. Changing speed limits in this town, it's you might as well just go and play the lottery and trying to hit it before you can get speed limit change in this township or any township, I guess, like that, because you have to go through the DOT. So the strip's a good start. I think I like that recommendation, and it's a quick fix, I think.
It was more of a problem years ago when it was a direct straightaway all the way from 9, and we, at one time, actually came up with a solution where you put a curve at the beginning of the road when you first got onto Wyckoff, which slowed the traffic down until you hit where Strickland Road comes in, which kept it slow enough, and so there was one solution already put in place.
Are there any objections to these recommendations? To any of the recommendations?
You know, rumble strips are a good idea.
Any objections? Okay, well, we're gonna open it up to the public in a second. Anything else on this one? Is this, Mr. Chinesky, in terms of executing, what's necessary to make this happen?
We
Are
can-
there dollars involved? Is there?
No, we can act on that fairly quickly, unless Mr. Nunziato wants to correct me.
Okay. I'm gonna, who here from the public would like to specifically talk on this particular issue? I'm sorry?
Yeah, about Wyckoff.
Yes, okay, you're one, Mrs. Dixell. Anyone else on Wyckoff? So, 2 people. Okay, come on up, Mrs. Dixell, please.
Ladies first, Mr. Maggot. Ladies first. Can't help you.
Good evening, Barbara Dixell, The Villages, Freehold, Howell Township. Regarding the Villages, just so you know, I think one of the reasons why Edinburgh and that whole thing isn't finished, I think there's some kind of litigation going on between Freehold Township and maybe Hovnanian over the roadway and finishing that and taking 400 feet off the Rutgers farm and straightening all that out. I think there's some kind of litigation going on. If you check with Joe Attord, the county engineer, I think he can expand on that further. But from what I understand, from what I remember being told a while ago, there's something going on, some kind of litigation, because when we had all those accidents coming off Hall's Mill, making the left or right turn onto County Road 524, Elton, Adelphia Road, I was told that, and I was part of the Villages Howell Township Liaison Committee, which was Sylvia LaCitra, Aaron Schrager, Cecilia Whitehouse, and me. And that went back to 1997. And we were told that we couldn't get the light there because they had to wait for the, green, whatever, that development to be built and the road to be done and take 400 feet to realign Hall's Mill. Well, it got to the point where I guess they started this litigation, and I had called up Ted Giannichini before he retired, and Joe Attord took over. I had said, listen, you and I are going to be at old age homes before this ever gets done. I said, so what they did was, Joe Attord actually went to Freehold Township, and they had to do some kind of liability insurance and whatever, but they strung the light. I mean, they put the light up so that we could stop all the accidents and get the traffic flowing. But that's going to be a while, and I'm told it's going to be a couple of years down the road, because it's a part federal project also. But there's some type of litigation going on. I remember hearing that. I think the rumble strips might be a good idea. I get all kinds of calls from people, in the villages and people. And by the way, the Villages Howell Township Liaison Committee was instrumental in getting that S-curve, because it used to be a quick flick of the right wrist going down Wyckoff at horrendous speeds. And in those years, in the 1997, our people were getting hit. Our people were getting hit. Our vehicles were getting hit, and our residents were getting injured crossing. So. In my house, Klein, when Klein was the manager here, and Klein and Bruce Davis and Sylvie and me and DOT, they had a meeting in the pouring rain out there one day, and the engineers went out and decided that, yes, an S-curve off 9 coming down Wyckoff would be an excellent idea to slow down the speed, which it has.
Mrs. Dixon, do you have any comments on the recommendations?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent idea. I think it's an excellent idea. Like I said, I get all kinds of calls from people in the villages.
Great.
But I think the rumble strips are a good idea, be a traffic calming device. I really wish that they could make this traffic, the speed, instead of 2 speeds, 1 speed. I just somehow, I know that's been a bone of contention for years. And there is an ordinance that's got 2 speeds, and I just wish for some reason that ordinance can be changed to have 1 speed the entire length of the roadway instead of 2
Sergeant,
speeds.
can that speed be changed to 1 the entire way?
It's a possibility, but we'd have to review, since it is a rural area, I would say that speed is probably suffice for what it's at. Like I said, there's no history, and we would have to do a count and see what the actual numbers are.
Okay.
And just so that you know also, there's still traffic going out of, when they built the park and ride, they made the curve into the park and ride off Wyckoff, supposed to be a curve. Well, if you looked at it from Route 9, it was a straight in. So what we did was we went back, and I'm one of the ones that went back to the Trizzy Transit and had them make the curve deeper so that
Okay.
people can't go out, but they're still going out the inn. They're still going out. Now, if there could be a way of some kind of electric eye to catch license plate numbers, like they do on the highway in the toll booths, somehow, because that's a fatal accident waiting to happen. Every single day, I'll go up and down Wyckoff Mills Road, and I see cars going out the inn exit on Wyckoff from the park and ride. Now, that's really a fatal accident waiting to happen. And the other thing is the traffic. Barbara, you'll attest to that, is that horrendous traffic going up and down Wyckoff after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You cannot get in or out, up or down Wyckoff Mills Road. So I think maybe some of these rumble strips maybe give somebody a little push toward Route 9.
Good. Thank you, Mrs. Dixon.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Magid, come on up, sir. Welcome. You have comments on Wyckoff? Please, come on up.
Kurt Magid, 89 Mariners Cove. I think a month or so ago, I told you of a really dangerous thing. It has nothing to do with speed on Wyckoff Road. It has everything to do with that post office, and it goes like this. People are parking along the sidewalk of that post office. Not just 1 car, 2. I've even seen 3 cars. They even do it when the parking lot is not full. Now, I want you to picture this because we talked about a really fatal accident or horrible accident ready to happen. You're coming out of the post office. Cars can be coming down from Adelphia Road, so you look to the right. Now you're inching out to see what's coming down up that road toward the post office when there are 2 or 3 cars parked. Let's say even 1. Very often 2. There's 1 car immediately, somebody will pull behind. I told this board at that time that what has to be done, and this is a strictly humanitarian consideration for a devastating accident, because I've seen what happens when the people come out. They don't inch out. They take a look, and they give a fly. I don't know how many accidents have happened there, and I'm not even going to ask, because it doesn't matter what the past is, matters the present. So how do we eliminate that? I recommended at that time that some signs be put down on that sidewalk which says no parking, just right alongside that post office, and it's implemented, because if you give first a warning and second time a ticket, the word will spread and the people won't do. The post office will complain, there's no question about it. I've talked to the lady there. She's a very nice lady, wonderful, like the village inn, pleasant to talk to, wonderful. But she likes it that there's more available, especially now we're coming into the Christmas season, but anytime. But how do you equate that versus a life, or mangled, broken back, or whatever happens?
Mr.
Because you're talking about a T. You're talking about a T accident. If that car pulls out a little further and it's a T, in the driver's seat, a belt and an air conditioner, Nothing will save them, okay?
Mr. Chernetsky, that did come up, and I think at the time you were going to reach out and determine if we can put some signs there. Have you looked into that?
No, well, we did, in terms of talking with the post office, we understand that they are making some plans for the future. But I think this is precisely the type of issue that needs to be filtered through a policy, once we have it in place, because I'm not sure, one, Mr. Magid said, history doesn't matter. Unfortunately, in terms of prioritizing investments, history does matter. It's a piece of information that's useful. So we have to filter it through a policy. We have to look at accident history, and we have to also ask the residents who would be affected, whether or not they support it. So,
Can we, at a minimum, to Mr. Magid's point, reach out to the postmaster there and just ask them if they could be more attentive to that? Maybe they can put up a sign inside and indicate that, please don't pull up in front, because we all see it. They pull up, they run, they drop their letters in the mailbox on the outside. Their cars are parked right there.
Why don't we just put some signs up that says no parking? I'm not talking of past history, and you want past history. I'm talking of the next person that's crippled or killed. And I've seen how they go out, and they don't use the right caution. It's the bell curve. 90% of people are cautious.
Sergeant McCoy, how long did, I guess it was in the show, that they were going to, how long did they say it was going to be until they actually do that move?
When I talked to her probably in the beginning of the year, she was saying hopefully within 2 years or so, but...
Is there anything we can do on an interim basis, Mr. Chernetsky, to Mr. Magid's point?
Well, we'll file an RTC and we'll investigate it.
Okay. Good.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Magid.
Move fairly quickly. It can happen tomorrow. Thank you.
Mayor, the problem is there's not enough parking at the post office. Don't take it away. There's not enough parking.
Okay.
You can't
What
take
else?
it away.
Hold on. I'm sorry, Mr. Lariah, come on up, sir. Go right ahead, Mr. Lariah. Just please introduce yourself.
Vince Lariah, 56C, The Villages.
Welcome, Mr. Lariah.
I'd like to address some questions to the sergeant, if I may.
Please.
I need some clarification. Relative to the Villages, the rumble strips that you're proposing, how far away is it from those condos? Is it...
Offhand, I don't know. I'd have to look at that.
When an automobile goes over a rumble strip, will there be an increase in noise?
Yes.
Do you have a ballpark, Sergeant? Is it 100 feet? Is it 1,000 feet? Is it 50 feet?
I'm not 100% sure, but I could look into that. But I know where we're looking to put them, they do have the high trees that would hopefully eliminate any, substantial noise.
What is an eye tree, just for Mr. Lariah?
High tree.
One of them pine trees.
Oh, a high tree. I thought you said an eye tree. I didn't know what an eye tree was.
Mayor, Mr.
It looks like an iPod.
I believe...
Well, there's not that many branches, it looks like an...
Go ahead, Mr.
If Sergeant McCoy were to stop in my office tomorrow and indicate to me on our GIS map where he'd like these rumble strips, we can tell you to the foot where it is to the nearest
All right, can we then get a phone call to Mr. Lariah? He's obviously on the village's board, just to satisfy his inquiry on that point?
Yeah, I have his number from last week. That's not a problem.
I don't want, I'm afraid of disturbing people living over in that quadrant.
Sure, it's a fair point.
But any calming activities we can
Good.
implement,
Okay.
we're all for it.
Thank you, Mr. Lariah. We'll get you a phone call tomorrow with the distances. Anything else on this particular street? Was one more after this?
No, one more,
All right, before we move on, are there any objections from the council to proceed in executing this plan?
No, I motion again to accept the recommendations as presented by Sergeant Markulik for Wyckoff Road.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
Any additional remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Malave?
Yes.
Mr. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes, okay, what's next?
The next item is Addison Road.
Okay. Want to come sit up closer to the front? Those on Addison, if you'd like to come sit up closer to the front, please do so.
The Traffic Safety Unit received an RTC complaint. The complaint was referenced to speeding vehicles along Addison Road, the crashes that have been increasing, concerns for child safety. The requests: reduce speed limit from 35 to 25, speed bumps or speed humps, and hour evaluation from the Traffic Safety Unit. There's approximately 700 to 800 vehicles traveling the roadway on an average day. Minimal crash history from January 2003, there's been 13 accidents, majority at Fort Plains Road and the intersection of Addison. The road width is over 12 foot per lane. The speed limit is 35 the entire length, and 90% of the vehicles approximately 45 miles per hour. Residential factors, approximately 25 homes situated on Addison Road. There was a petition signed by 16 residents, 13 Clare Circle residents, which was 7 homes, and 3 Addison Road residents, which was 2 homes. Some options: reduce the speed limit, implement speed bumps or humps, improve signage at the sharp curve, and narrow the lanes with edge lines.
That's a good one.
Our recommendations: narrow the lanes to 12 foot with edge lines, start the lines just north of the south entrance of Spicy Pond, and end at Fort Plains Road. Place horizontal alignment signs at the sharp curve, in addition to curve ahead signs with recommended 25 mile per hour speed limit, both directions. And this is basically just where I was looking to start the lines. Right here is Spicy Pond, start our lines right here going northbound towards Fort Plains. It's hard to tell, but right here where the sharp curve is, with them the arrows showing that there's a sharp curve, you're coming up to a sharp curve. We would have to go out there and actually look and see how many we would actually need if it was approved. Anywhere from 3 to 5, whatever it may be. These are the signs we are talking about. You would be able to see them from both directions. And then also the advanced curb warning sign. It says 35, but it would be 25 underneath that sign, coming in both directions. No change in 35 mile per hour speed limit. 85 percentile speed is approximately 45 miles per hour, which plus or minus would be appropriate speed for that roadway. Speed humps would be not justified due to the 85th percentile, speed too high, and just the posted speed limit too high.
If you go back to that picture where you showed the curves back.
How do you back up? Yeah, back up.
I thought you meant back up. Just to use the wheel. Just use the wheel. All right, sure we want to go.
One more. That one right there. Now, if you were to go further left, against the left edge of that picture where you come up towards Fort Plains Road, the road becomes much wider at that point, at the entry-exit point. That's why a lot of cars start their high speed there and then accelerate towards that curve. So narrowing the lane with the lines is a great idea, especially at that end. And more permanently, if we could pinch the road in, that would stop them from beginning their start where they get the speed going up towards the curve coming back around this way. It's much wider on the other end, which you can't see on that picture.
Sergeant, one other option we thought we discussed was the idea of transverse lines, meaning these are lines that are perpendicular
Hatch lines?
on the
Yeah.
road as you approach the curve.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. We also talked about implementing what were called the transverse lines, which are perpendicular to the road as you approach the curve. They're bright, they're very bright and white, and so it really defines the lane, you know, and it kind of strikes you. So as you're approaching the curve, you'll see these transverse lines, you'll see a defined lane, and you'll see these reflector signs up ahead of you. And then you'll also see the 25 mile an hour speed limit sign. So it'll strike you pretty hard as you approach the curves.
Can I,
Before we get to you, anything else, Sergeant, on this?
That's all we have.
How, on these particular issues, Mr. Chernetsky, how soon could these be executed? There is some urgency, obviously, in light of your statistics on Addison.
There's unless the engineer or the sergeant thinks otherwise, there's no real regulatory issues that we need to act on. So
Are there
just
any budget issues?
I believe we can use current budget to
For the paint?
for the paint and the signs.
So timeline-wise, if we gave you the direction tonight, is it 30 days, is it 45 days?
Oh, I would.
Depends on the snow.
No, with the snow and leaf collection, it'd be a priority. I would say within 45 days. Bill, would that be?
Yeah, I mean, weather permitting, obviously, if it starts snowing for...
As long as we would have someone that would able to put the striping down, the signage would just require markouts, and that's not...
That's right. With the with the plastic-type striping, there has to be certain weather conditions to put that down.
Okay. All right, well, we'll open up to the public. You two gentlemen, anyone else that wants to be heard on Addison? Anyone else here on Addison? Okay, go ahead, introduce yourself, gentlemen, please.
Hi, I'm Stan Horowitz, 25 Clare Circle.
Good to see you again, Mr. Horowitz.
Thank you. What I hear tonight, I'm appalled. The 85% just doesn't explain this picture of the last accident at Clare Circle in Addison. That's my front yard. That's the car sitting in my front yard with the undercarriage ripped out. This is a police report from your patrolman. And I quote, from my past experience, this is from, which patrolman? I'll even get the name. Where are you?
I believe it was Mike Martin.
No.
No?
I observe Lieutenant Pilecki.
Yeah, you're right, Mike Martin. 631.
And I quote, "From my past experience, I estimate that Ambrosino, the driver of the car, was traveling well over the posted 35-mile-an-hour limit and was attempting to make a hard left turn." But that was actually due to his tires blowing out. From taking the turn that you're talking about putting striping down on, which is Addison coming from Fort Plains, narrowing the roads with lines. Please tell me, explain to me how that stops a car that's doing 70 miles an hour on a straightaway that's long enough to get going that fast. How is it going to stop them? How is it going to impress upon them by putting 25-mile-an-hour suggested speed when a car is doing 70-plus miles an hour? Council, we have Fast and Furious. You see it in the movie. Kids are taking it serious. I can't take my wife and my child on our sidewalk that this car landed on for a walk. My neighbor had a car drive through. He is across from me on Addison, across on Clare Circle, bordering Addison. He had a car go through his front yard. Same problem. Came around that turn, excessive speed. I know you're telling me 85% of the people are doing 45 or less. 45 in a residential? Since when?
Sergeant, I know that's not an easy question to respond to, but in your view, is there anything else that can be done to address Mr. Horowitz's concern?
Unfortunately, we are going to get the small percentage of vehicles that are going to go above the speed limit. And in that case, I understand his point, but I believe that driver was driving recklessly throughout the whole town, and I believe the lieutenant himself issued numerous tickets for them offenses. So you have that rare occasion, but I think, the way it is right now, we do not have, the crash history. Yeah, we have a few, and that was a little bit worse of an accident, but I just don't think that one accident like that is going to call to lower the speed limit.
In other words, Mayor, the 85th percentile is just that. 15% of the people are irresponsible, and they're the ones we have to aggressively go after.
I only have one daughter.
I understand, and I don't want to diminish your concerns at all.
I moved into a quiet neighborhood. I've only been there 3 years. My neighbors told me of several occasions before the car went through his front yard and exited out his driveway that this had been going on for quite some time. But now, this is only in the last 6 months. We're not talking about 25 years. I just, and don't get me wrong, I appreciate you even acting on some of it. I'm trying to understand how painting lines and putting up suggested speed limits is going to stop somebody who disregards every day the speed limit of a residential neighborhood. Just before we came here, a truck fishtailed around that turn and barely caught it to be able to go on.
Mr. Horowitz, if we deputized you for the night, what would you recommend? What would you want us to do more than what has been suggested?
I have seen in Eatontown, Red Bank, and Little Silver reduce speeds with speed bumps or humps, whatever it calls for. And they are nothing short of 95 to 100% successful. Why is it so tough?
I happen to be in the minority because I agree with you. I'd put speed humps,
I
but...
just don't get it. I just don't get it.
Because I think, again, in all due respect, because I've spent a number of months now really looking into these issues because they come up all the time, and, you know, we want to be of the greatest service possible, and we want to do the right thing. Unfortunately, these things aren't always the right thing. They have danger. They have inherent dangers. Anytime you put a ramp in a road where people are traveling at speeds in excess of 30 or 35 miles an hour, you create other dangers.
What dangers? Please explain.
Launching.
A launching?
Yeah.
You know what? If they're launching off a speed bump, I'd say they're in the wrong.
I think, Mr. Harwood, so the concern is, in fairness, if God forbid, look, we all know you can't regulate stupidity. So there are going to be people who drive well in excess of the speed limit all over the place. We all see it. But if we were to put in a speed hump, and someone comes around, doesn't live in the area, doesn't drive through it, and they hit that bump at 50 miles an hour, God forbid, their vehicle is going to be projected, and it could create even worse damage, because now you've got a vehicle that weighs how many thousands of pounds?
And it's off the ground.
And it's off the ground. I don't think we disagree with you. I think what Mr. Czerniecki is saying is we have to balance, are we going to try and put in a measure that may cause an even greater problem? And I think that's really what we're saying.
Right, if I just want to add to that. Speed humps and bumps are not effective in reducing speed unless they're spaced between 300 and 600 feet apart. So if you're going to do that, and you consider the length of Addison Road, then that means every fire engine and every ambulance needs to come to a complete halt, more or less, you know, as they approach these things. And that greatly reduces response time. Not only ambulance and fire, but also police. So there's an unintended consequence there as well. But now, if you add on top of that the crash history and some of the policy recommendations we're looking at, and to install those speed humps along the length of Addison Road and the cost associated with that, well, we can show you accident histories throughout town where that type of investment would be more warranted.
Gotcha.
If we were to err on the side of caution here, other than speed bumps, is there anything else we could do, Sergeant Markulik?
If you lower the speed, the complaints are going to be, threefold.
Well, how about,
you lower from 25, people are still going to do the 45, and we'll be doing an RTC every other day. I don't think, I was out there personally myself enforcing, and I was stopping cars at 5 miles per hour to tell them to slow down. I was not getting any speeds out there. I was off the road, I was with a handheld unit, and I just don't see the speeds, and it's showing on the counter. 45, most officers are going to give, 7 miles per hour to 10 miles per hour.
In a residential. I
The,
just don't understand. We're not talking about.
we understand your point. We understand your point. How about what we did at Winston Park with those collapsible pylons, pinching in the road near the curves with those?
That's possible if you want to try that. I mean, these are just phases, and we could evaluate, at 3 months into the plan, just like anything else, see if the speeds have reduced. If not, then we go to a next phase, a little bit more costly.
You're right. You know what? I'm getting way too personal about it. You're acting on it, and I should be very happy about that. And I guess it's a start, but I've got a real bad feeling it's going to prove you wrong. And I hope it doesn't involve someone getting killed.
Can we, on Deputy Mayor Tabasco's point, we've seen other traffic reports we've gotten from firms previously that putting in these visual effects, if you will, has a sort of a behavioral impact on the driver as they're approaching the area when things look more confined and they're inclined, for whatever reason, behavioral to slow down. Could we, in fact, do what he's suggesting along the roadways in this area, the pylons?
Yeah, I would think it's possible.
I mean, in your view, does that cause any, from a traffic safety perspective, is there any downsides to
I would
that?
have to look if the MUTCD recommends them pylons along the roadway,
and I would have to get back to the manager on that, and he'll get back to you.
If you do it up by Fort Plains Road where they first start to accelerate and then also do it by the curve, you're slowing it down in two spots.
All right, absent what the deputy mayor just recommended, are there any additional comments from the council on these recommendations? Are there any objections to these recommendations? All right, so you think you can execute these within 30, 45 days, Mr. Chinyetsky?
Yeah, majority of them, yes, sir.
All right, and can you, we'll ask for more formal action in a minute, can you also, through Sergeant Markulik, look into the deputy mayor's idea as well?
I think it's a good idea, we will look into that.
All right, I ask for a motion and a second, please, to act on these recommendations for Addison.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
Any additional comments?
I'd like to comment.
I'm sorry, okay, is there anyone other than Mr. Matt? You also want to make comments,
Yes,
sir?
sir.
Sure, go ahead, just introduce yourself, please.
Frank Pisco, 26 Claire Circle.
Welcome, Mr. Pisco.
How are we doing tonight? Not to get, I happen to be in the same profession as these three gentlemen here, so I have the utmost respect. I played softball against, I think, two of them. I live on the corner there, right by that curve. Probably for the last 10, 11 years, I can't count the number on both hands, how many cars that come up on my property. My kids cannot play in the front yard, okay? Short of a guardrail, I don't know if the township wants to pay to put a guardrail the length of my property up to protect my children and my property. There's a problem here. My daughter, in the last 2 months, I know mine was reported when I went to work for midnights, and 15 minutes after I report for duty in my town where I work, I get a call from my wife, there's a car went up on my property, out through my driveway. Had that been 2:30 in the afternoon, it would have gone and crushed one of my children coming off the school bus. So we do have a problem here, and it's not Mr. Chernovsky's neighborhood, okay? So that's my major issue. This is my neighborhood, all right? And I don't want to be a pain in the neck, and I'm getting a little mad here, because something's going to happen, and I don't want to see my kid or Kendall or anybody else in that neighborhood hit by a car. And I don't think it's being addressed properly. I really don't.
Being that you're in the profession, what else, in your experience?
I know for a fact that if the speed is lowered, if the speed is requested, DOT will grant the request, okay, for speed humps. It's going to require some law enforcement, some extra enforcement. I don't know why this is so funny.
We've been through it. The Juan, when he said it before, that to get the state to allow for speed reductions when the traffic studies say they can't be because of the 85 percentile thing. We've gone through this path a number of times, and every single time we were shot down going to the states. That's what he was saying before.
Okay.
I wasn't laughing at you, I was just...
I don't think this is a laughing matter at all.
No, it's not.
And
that route is actually the...
I won't cut oak trees down on that side of the property because it's a barrier. I mean, giant oak trees. Now the last car missed the oak tree, and came across my driveway. Like I said, if it was 2:30 in the afternoon, it would have been my sons getting off the school bus, and you would have had a much bigger problem if it wasn't 10:30 at night. So, I'm getting a little mad. And to tell you the truth, unless those line stripings have magnetic barriers that pop up when a car is going to cross the line. My daughter made a right turn off of Claire, went around that curve, and was forced over and hit the curb. Lightly hit the curb. She's pregnant with my grandchild. Okay? The woman next door to Mr. Horowitz, the same thing, was forced off to the side of the roadway by cars coming, and most of them are the same cars. Okay, I can sit out there blowing leaves, and I gotta watch. They're the same cars. So this is not a new curve to them. Okay, so this isn't the issue here, that it's a new roadway.
Let me ask you, what are the times in both of your views where this is the most abused? Is there a particular time? Is it rush hour in the morning? Is it rush hour in the evening?
Predominantly in the rush hours.
In the evening rush hour.
But it does happen during the course of the, with my shift, I change every week, so I do see cars, I don't expect these guys to be out there all day. They have other things to do.
Sure.
All right? That's my understanding, and I've been doing this for 21 years. But they can't be out there all day. It's a waste of their time.
Sergeant, in your view, you did the speed issue, knowing this 85 percentile rule, and while the manager I couldn't think more highly of him, he and I have a philosophical disagreement on the 85th percentile, because in my view that means 85% of the people who speed get to set our speed limits, and I find it totally offensive. But putting that aside, that's the law right now. If we tried to get the speed limit reduced, could it happen? And yes, I broke the speed limit once. I know that's a big point of amusement. It's a big point of amusement for all the people in the audience that never have broken the speed limit. So I actually did drive over the speed limit once on Route 9, so let's just get that out for humorous purposes, since it's such a distraction. Go ahead,
With these
Sergeant.
speeds,
It's really not, actually, it really isn't that funny, like this gentleman said. Go ahead.
we look at several factors. We look at crash history, we look at the 85th percentile, and we look at other factors, residential complaints. I know we had a petition, but the majority of people who are complaining are from Clare Circle, not Addison. And if I had more Addison, then I would say, yep, I think the residents believe it's an issue too. To lower that speed, we would send it to the state, and we would have all these factors together, and they would approve it or deny it. At this time, I just don't think lowering the speed is going to help us any. It's just going to increase the complaints. The speeds aren't that much, 85% of the vehicles are not traveling at 15, 20 over. I just don't see that it's, you do have the periodic 10, 15% that are going to disobey.
Where can it hurt us, though, lowering the speed limit?
I just think if we lower it for one, we're going to have to lower it for the whole town, and then the issues are even going to threefold, and we're going to need 50 guys.
Well, hopefully there's no fatalities.
So we're talking about a more immediate solution, and we can do traffic calming, or take traffic calming measures way ahead of whenever the state might possibly permit a speed reduction.
All right, Mr. Magid, why don't you come up? You have comments on this one, Mr. Magid? Why don't you come on up? Gentlemen, would you give Mr. Magid, one of you, give him a seat for a minute? What do you have for us, Mr. Magid, on this issue? Thanks, gentlemen.
I have something that
Just introduce yourself again, Mr. Mayor.
Abe Maggot, 89 Mariners Cove. I have something that I told you and was very specific a couple of months ago, and I'll be very simple about it. If you went to Freehold and went on Stillwell's Corner Road, and they don't have studies or anything like that, because I don't know about accidents there, over on the sidewalk, numbers come up when you're going at a certain speed. And they just put it up there. You don't need a DOT, you don't need anything, I'm sure. It's on the sidewalk. All right. Now, that in itself, and I've seen it, has somewhat of a psychological effect, but it won't stop the guy going 70 miles an hour, I know that. But now, and I mentioned this to Tom, to Mr. Zanetsky. In fact, he told me to look into it. I said, you look into it. I could look into it, but you look into it. And I can give you recommendations on how to look into it, without studies or anything.
Miss Dixell would have gotten it from you like that.
Well, maybe.
Come on.
You put up that sign with one little addition, which is readily available. That I've checked out already. But you do it, and I'll guide you to it.
Mr. Maggie, just...
How's a camera? How's a camera?
Make sure we stay to that.
And when somebody exceeds the speed, whatever it is, by over 5 miles an hour, wonderful. You don't have to worry about police being there. You don't have to worry about speed bumps or hydroplaning or anything else. Nothing physical. Technology. Marvelous thing happens. Just like if you go through Easy Pass and, speed through. Boom, takes your picture. Now, that camera is not on at all the time. And that's the little thing I found out the difference. And it takes one little chip. That's all it takes. The camera is not on, like for Easy Pass watching everybody. Well, maybe they don't. It just takes the picture. Now we have psychology. It's a wonderful thing. Guy did 50, 60, whatever. Boom, he gets the thing in the mail. And you decide whether it's a warning or a ticket. But, you know about Tom-Toms in the jungle, we send a message? When he gets that ticket, 10 of his neighbors are going to know it in a hurry. And it will work like a charm, because people do not speed through Easy Pass, and that's not even local, that's statewide. Just do that. I asked Tom to do that, and it's the easiest thing in the world.
That's the best solution. Georgia told us.
I have, no, it's not, like he says, it's not funny. It's very serious. I'm very serious. And they haven't understood what's going on. Without the camera, get the camera, take the picture, boom, the guy gets the ticket. He won't do it, 10 of his friends won't, and it'll spread all over.
Thank you,
and even without the camera, it tends to work. With the camera, we work wonderfully. I told you that 2 months ago.
Mrs. Dixell, you have a comment on this road? One sentence. I'm going to hold you to it. Just reintroduce yourself, please.
You already put a guardrail on somebody's property on 5 Points and Vandermeer. Why can't you do it to this guy? The because somebody went through this guy's property also and kept going up on his, why can't you people put a guardrail on this guy's property? You've already done it on 5 Points in Vanderveer.
We'll take
Take
that into
it under your
consideration.
advisement. Thank you for your comment, Mrs. Dixell. Is there anyone else that wants to be heard from the public on Addison? Addison Road, you have a comment on Addison Road, sir? Shh, you got to, hold on one second, folks, please. You need to come up to the microphone, sir, and introduce yourself for the record. Just please give us your name and address.
One more.
Bob Bradley, 2 Timberline Drive in Howell.
Could you just, yeah, I'm sorry, Mr.
You
Brandy.
paint them lines in the street, it only makes the road more slippery. If you just, on Friendship Road, they have a light that lights up, it flashes, tells you there's a bend there. I mean, it helps a lot on Friendship Road.
Okay.
I mean, like I said, you paint the lines in the street, I don't know if you ever drove on the painted lines. The tires lock up on the lines, it's going to create more of an issue there, I believe. I mean, I tow into town, I think it's a pretty easy.
All right, thank you for your comment. All right, does the council have any additional comments or concerns on this? We already had a motion and a second. Are there any additional remarks to accept these recommendations?
To accept these?
To accept the recommendations? Hearing none. Ms. Woolman, I believe you already had a motion and a second, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Malavey?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Tabasco?
Aye.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, is there anything else, Mr. Czerniecki, or is that it?
No, Mayor, I just want to point out again that I think that if we had a policy in place again, that we wouldn't be dealing with, having a council having to approve rumble strips. And I think, again, it's inefficient and ineffective. We can work this, it's not perfect, we can put it, eventually, we'll program it, and then you'll look at it all at once during the budget process.
Okay.
And that's where I'd like to get us.
Terrific. Thank you, Sergeant. We appreciate your testimony here this
Thank
evening.
you.
All right, we're going to take a 5-minute recess, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to ask the council, unless they have anything urgent, that we skip council reports, and we get into hearing of citizens.
Do they have any report?
If I could have everyone's attention, please. Ms. Woolman, are we back on?
We are back on.
Okay. I'm going to call the council's attention to our agenda. Just in light of the hour, we do have some public hearings on ordinances, so I would ask that unless any member of the council has an urgent item under official reports, that we proceed. Does any member of the council have anything urgent to report?
Mayor, I actually feel that we should move forward
Good.
onto hearing of citizens
Okay.
in light of the time.
I couldn't agree more. All right, the time is 5 minutes of 10. We have the public list. I would just ask members of the public to be conscious, if you will, of everyone's time, your neighbors, what have you. We do have a very significant agenda that we still need to get through this evening. There are 6 individuals in the public who have signed up to speak, and I'm going to just call out, I think there's a few people that actually spoke already. You want your name added, ma'am? Could you just say aloud your name? You said Colleen?
Holly. Oh, Colleen. DeMarks.
Okay. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. George, I think Mr. and Mrs. George has left, is that right? Okay. Mr. Marciniak, if you...
No.
Mr. Marciniak?
Forget it.
Shh, folks, if you...
Hey, Stanley.
He can't hear you.
Just, if you need, folks, just so we can keep going, if you have to have a conversation, we appreciate that. We would just ask that you maybe take it outside of the council chambers. Mr. and Mrs. George, are you still here? I think they've already spoken.
Yeah.
Mr. Horowitz, I think he's left as well.
Yes.
All right, we've got Mr. Magid, Mr. Hammer, Mr. Costigan, and Mr. Marks. Mr. Magid, you're up first, sir. Come on up. Welcome.
I'm on that list too.
You are, Mrs. Dixell, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
She's so defensive. Oh.
I want council people to...
You have to give it to her first, though.
Okay, but I want to hand it to the council people as I'm speaking because I'm referring to what's there.
Okay, would you, you'll pass it around, Mrs. Schlegel, please? Terrific, thank you. Mr. Magid, if you wouldn't mind, after you introduce yourself, if you could just give us a sense of what you'd like to ask us tonight, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Abe Magid, 89 Mariners Cove.
Hello, Mr. Magid.
I was here last week, and what you're looking at, and I want to, is the Manasquan River in back of our houses on Moore's Landing. If you look at a thing called E, it's totally jammed up where it flows under Burgerville Road. The next one, if you look at C, you'll see the Manasquan River has trees and growth totally blocking the flow of the water. And you'll see there's an A, B, and C with giant trees doing the same thing. Now, I sent a letter to Mr. Zanecki on November the 13th, and I said the week before it rained only one day, and it was already flooding, not into the street of Mariners Cove, but there's like a sort of like a detention basin depression, and there was plenty of water in there, and the Manasquan River was already about 80 feet wide. Now, I spoke with Mr. Zanecki about this, and he said, well, Ron Sanisak would get back to me on this, the emergency management. I said, no, I really want you to do it. Anyway, I got a call yesterday from Ron Sanisak, and it's incredible. I pointed out to the manager that this has to be done immediately and by the township, because if you get several days, we're going to have flooding again. Ron Sanisak said, well, feasible study, accessibility, gave me all kinds of language. He even mentioned before the Army Corps of Engineers. And I said, I'm not talking about that. I want the township immediately to get out there and get those trees out of there and that growth, that underbrush, before it gets very cold, and they really won't. Because what we're doing is, if there's 3-4 days, and who can predict nature, we're going to have a devastating flood, because this is far worse than the normal because of all the trees that have come down. Now, I want you to study those closely. Now, I spoke with Mr. Zanecki. In fact, I called his office this morning. I asked Myra he should return my call. So I'll say it. I want the council now to talk to the manager about how to go about dollar-wise within this township to get those trees out of there immediately. Not a study, not the emergency management under Ron Sanisak. I want the councils, since you asked me to go to the manager rather than to bring things up here, I'm saying now, several weeks later, when I get a call, by the way, Ron Sanisak hadn't even seen it. Let me finish. Hadn't seen these, hadn't yet gone out there, said he would. No, has to be done right away. Go ahead.
Okay, let me address
Go ahead,
this
Mr.
first.
Kabaska.
About 10 years ago, that oxbow of the river flooded terribly. And the part where you're talking about Mariners Cove, there was like 4 or 5 homes there that got flooded out all the time. We went to the state for permission as a town to dredge the river. And about that time frame, there were front loaders and big equipment that went in there and cleaned out the river all the way up to Highway 9. To get that permission, though, took a couple of years, and it involved the Department of Environmental Protection.
You're telling me all the history that I know, by the way.
Let me finish.
Okay, now I have more to say. Time. Go ahead.
We got responses, just so you know, that were, there's wildlife. It's a habitat for the fish, and it's a huge endeavor. And where we are right now, the homes are not flooding. To get permission to go dredge again is not an overnight thing that Tom can say tomorrow, okay, guys, with the DPW.
Why is it that okay.
Mr. Magan, I'm going to just ask you. We'll let you speak.
Good.
But
Okay.
when someone else has the floor,
Absolutely.
let him get it out.
You got it.
When he's done, I'll come back to you.
So all I'm trying to tell you is there is history, and when it was a big enough issue, the state okayed us destroying the habitat for the fish and protecting the residents. But now, as bad as those, maybe they weren't 100-year storms, but they were 50-year storms. It rained like for 13 straight hours a couple weeks ago, but the homes did not flood out. They didn't.
Can I talk?
So when you ask Tom, Tom to go tell his DPW guys tomorrow to dredge it out, they can't do that without going to the state.
What is it about my English language, Mr. Tabasco, that you don't understand anything I've said? I didn't ask him what you said at all. Please let me finish. Don't interrupt me, as the mayor will tell you not to. I didn't ask you for dredging. I didn't ask you for 100-year history. I didn't ask you, did he go to the DOT? None of that was said by me. I was very specific on what I said to you, and it was very exact. I want this township and the expense by this township to go out there, this township, not the DOT, not dredging. I never said anything about dredging. I know all about dredging. In the history. I've heard it 10 times. And
So what do you want,
Whoa. Don't interrupt. Mayor will tell you not to. Okay?
Come on.
I want this township, right now, to tell the manager how to go about, why are you shaking your head? I'm not finished. Let me finish. No, let me finish. No, don't do this.
Hold on a minute.
No. You didn't let me finish. Let's not go through this.
Mr. Maggie, I'm going to ask you, with all due respect, what is it very specific? You want us to...
I'll say it the third time now. Specific.
Mr. Maggie, you know what? There's no reason to be disrespectful.
I'm not being
There's no reason to be condescending.
I'm not being disrespectful.
And quite frankly, I'm going to summarize what I think your question is.
No.
Mr. Maggie, the last time I checked, I'm going to chair the meeting.
Wow.
And as chairman of the meeting, I'm going to
Please
ask
don't
you...
interrupt me by what I'm about to say. I want this township
Mr. Maggie, I'm going to ask you one more time.
Clear the trees out.
You can't.
Okay. All right, now you're finished. Stop.
No, I'm not finished, but
Mr. Maggot, you are finished. Mr. Chernetsky, I would ask, what can we do with respect to Mr. Maggot's concerns regarding clearing out these photographs? In your opinion, what can we do and what should we do in your professional judgment? And I don't want to hear from anybody except Mr. Chernetsky.
In my professional judgment, I need to consult my professionals to make sure we do not violate any rules or regulations. And again, in the interest of wanting to be responsive, hurt the broader community. I understand Mr. Maggot's request. I've delegated it to the appropriate department heads. I think the time frame in which I've given it to them and in which they've contacted him is appropriate and meets my standards. They are working on it. They're prioritizing it against the other needs in the community. It's a very busy time of year. I don't want to dismiss his concerns at all. As a matter of fact, I went to his home to pick up the pictures so I can understand what the problem is. And all I will tell you is that it's been delegated to the appropriate department heads, and I think we need to give them a reasonable time to formulate a plan and a response.
Okay. Now, does any member of the council have any objections to the recommendations as just outlined by the manager? Mr. Walsh? Any objections?
No objections.
Mr. Showmaker, any objections?
No.
Mr. Tabasco, any objections?
I would just ask that those people he said he's tasked now to look into it, to research the history from about 10 years ago as to what had to be done then.
So we all agree with the recommendation of our manager. Mr. Chernetsky, what is the timeline upon which you would expect to get some report back from your direct reports about a potential remedy?
I think, I would say optimistically by our meeting on the 12th is going to be to review professional proposals. I may have something to report at that time.
Okay.
But I feel confident that by the 19th, I'd have something positive to report.
So by December 19th, in your manager's report in these chambers at this regular meeting, you'll be able to give us an update with respect to what, if anything, can be done.
I planned on it.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Walsh?
Sir, can we have it in writing, Mr. Chernetsky?
Certainly.
I'd appreciate if it be in writing so that Mr. Maggott could have it also, and anybody else that would like it.
And to the extent you had an update prior to that, we would ask as a courtesy if you'd call Mr. Maggot, I know we've got his number, and just give him any update if you have something before the 19th. I don't think anyone would object to getting him any update on a more accelerated basis.
The only thing I would object to is I would object that it not, I think that, with all due respect to both parties, that Mr. Chernetsky put it in writing to Mr. Maggot and not call him, just to send it in writing so that
Good.
Mr. Maggot has it in
Okay.
writing for himself.
All right, Mr. Maggot, thank you.
Oh, I have one more item.
Okay, what else do you have?
All right. That was the letter of November 13th. Now, letter of November 11th, of which you were on the copy, and so was Robert Capitan. Item 4 of that resolution, in terms of Apostle Acres agreement with Freehold, where it said the applicant shall execute a developer's agreement with Howell Township Council concerning maintenance of the basin. Again, I took your advice, and I've been in discussions with Mr. Zanetsky about what is going on in terms of that agreement, not just the interlocal agreement, but what Freehold has at this point from the developer, if anything. I asked to be fully informed. I haven't heard anything, and I haven't had anything sent to me. So I'm now following up on the recommendation of Mr. Walsh. I want to know if anything has been done in communication from Howell Township, whether it's the manager or anybody else, with Freehold Township. Find out exactly from Freehold Township where it stands with, if there's no agreement where it stands with the Apostle Acres, I want to be fully informed by letter on this, and I'd like to have that as soon as possible.
Okay, Mr.
I may-
Janeski, what's the update, please?
Well, first, with respect to Mr. Maggid's request, let me say it's my policy that I don't share, I work for the council is the policymakers, and if there's a document to be discussed, it's going to be with the elected officials of the community in the proper venue, which may likely be in a closed session environment. So I have to respectfully decline Mr. Maggid's request to give him any of the specifics he's looking for at this time until council so authorizes me to do so. But beyond that, a developer's agreement is going to be initiated by the developer when he is ready to execute on a project in Freehold. I've been in touch with my counterpart in Freehold and asked him to keep me informed, and I'm not sure there's much more I could do at this point.
Okay.
There is the idea of an interlocal services agreement, but again, I know the attorney and I have talked preliminarily about that, kind of in broad terms. Again, that would be something council would have to finally authorize and approve, and I'm not going to share that with anyone until council says it's okay for me to do it.
Very good. Okay, thank you for that update.
Just a question on it. Am I to understand that the manager hasn't informed the council at this point whether there's not even an agreement between Freehold? And if the manager so informed the council
Yeah, we know that.
that there's no agreement, then I would be informed, once the council has been informed, that there's yet no agreement between Apostle Acres and Freehold Township. Conversely, I'm not asking for details, but if the manager should find out, or whoever in Howell does, that some agreement has been given to Freehold, I'm not asking for details, but I would like to know if they would, let's say if the manager tells the council, yes, some agreement has been proffered to Freehold Township, I would simply like to know that there's, not the details in any way, that there is an agreement currently between. Either way, I feel that information should be gleaned from Freehold, presented to the council, and then I should receive a letter in writing. Is that fair enough?
Mr. Janeski?
I don't know. It all depends on, the circumstances surrounding our negotiations. I think it'd be premature for us to commit to that.
Okay, here's what we're going to do. You'll apprise us when you're ready to talk about this in closed.
Yes, sir.
And then we'll make a policy decision and give you whatever the appropriate direction is at that
Yes, sir.
time. Okay, we'll get back to you, Mr. Maggid.
Oh, that's fine, and at some meeting, I'll request from you whether you have received, well, you can tell me whether you've made a policy decision. Now, later, when we're talking about the master plan, I also want to come back and
Yeah,
talk about
when we get to the public hearing portions,
That's
we'll
right.
recognize people at that time. Okay, thank you. Mr. Hammer?
I want to speak to the zoning.
Yes, we'll get to you when we do the regular ordinance discussions. Thank you very much, Mr. Hammer. Mrs. Dixell, come on up, welcome. Mrs. Dixell, doesn't say we'd like to talk about, if you would just,
I'm not, keep
when you come up, Mrs. Dixell, after your introduction, if you would just tell us the items you'd like to ask us about this evening, please.
Barbara Dixell, The Villages, Howell Township. I want to bring up Coles again. I did bring it once before, I'm going to bring it up again. I was in touch, I've given Deputy Manager Helene Schlegel a letter that I already sent to Coles, sent to the president of Coles, and sent to the governor. Okay. Coles, for your information, is not a member of the Chamber of Commerce at Howell. I do believe that when these big box stores and any of these big companies come to Howell, I believe that every one of these people should join the Chamber of Commerce of Howell. They should, if they want to serve the community, serve the public, and be good neighbors. I really feel that they should be
So
members.
what is it about Coles that you want to
What
talk
about Coles? Okay, the handicap front door still doesn't work. I've contacted them several times. I've written to their president. The handicap door does not work. You cannot get in there from the outside. The bottom molding of the door is on the floor. it may work from the inside out, it does not work from the inside in. If anybody is severely handicapped, and like I say,
Hold that thought, Barbara. Barbara is correct in that, and that has been well over at least a month and a half.
oh, no, it's been more than that,
But
Cindy. I'm sorry.
What I want to know, is that a violation that we can enforce from this point? I think it is. I think it's an it's a ADA regulation, and I think that is how that needs to be approached, and that's the end of that, Barbara.
Can you
That's
check
how we
into
need to
that,
take care of that.
Mr.
Write it
Chernetsky?
just like that.
You have code enforcement look into that right away? Okay.
They-
Well, I did ask that question.
Good. We'll get
Okay.
on it, Mrs. Dixon. What else do you have?
Okay, the reval, when is it going to come out? It was supposed to come out after November 10. When are we going to find out if we're getting killed? We have to move, we have to pay our taxes. What's happening?
Okay, Mr. Chernetsky, if you or Mr. Filiatro would give us an update, please. Mr. Filiatro.
Update I got from the tax assessor's office is the inspections and all the field work have been completed. The reval company has just obtained the September and October deeds from the county, which they're going to rework their numbers because real estate values have dipped a little bit, and they want to get the most up-to-date values, that they can get. So they are sitting in the office crunching the numbers, and as soon as, they have the entire package done, then they'll start notifying people, and we'll start.
Any timeline at all? Is it weeks? Is it days?
I was under the impression it might be this week, but it doesn't look like it's going to be at this point in time, so maybe next week.
And what will actually happen procedurally?
Well, procedurally, the assessor has things to do when rechecking that he has to do on the thing. I think Mr. Chernetsky has 3 drafts of a letter that he's going to pick the best of all 3 and come up with a letter from the town, and then they'll be sent, the letters will be phased out and sent out and I think in 3 different increments to taxpayers.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Is there a statutory time that we have to comply with? I mean, is there a timeline? What is the deadline? I think I've asked this before, and
I'm not sure. They're supposed to be certified by December 31st, but I think the assessor has until February
Yeah, it was February,
to finalize it, but I'm not sure the exact dates. We certainly could get them for you.
I would like, Mr. Chernetsky, I think just for the public, because most of my phone calls, and I spoke to Mr. Filiatro early in the evening, have been in regards to this matter, and if we could just get a definitive time for people so they will know, because it's almost like a time bomb. They're just waiting for, everything to go.
For a work session, why don't we list that for discussion and also review the draft letter?
Thank you.
Well, in simple terms, people are going to get mailed what their assessed values are. In the spring, there'll be an appeals period of time. We'll be going through the budget process, come up with what we're going to spend based on an aggregate assessed value, and then we'll come up with a rate, and then about August, July or August, people will know what their tax amount is.
People have to know, how much kind of money to set aside that we should be able to afford to pay our taxes.
I'm being very honest with you, Barbara. You're not going to know what your tax amount is until July or August, because it takes till June for us as a town to finish the budget. You'll know your value soon.
Okay, 9B6. Can we have
Go ahead, Mrs. Dixon, what's your question?
9B6, what is it? What are they doing in back of
Well,
us?
96 is authorizing $25 to be returned to...
So they canceling
It's a
offense.
cancellation.
Okay. Also, I did ask for a copy of the law regarding safe havens. I still don't have that from Ron Sanisek. I asked that last meeting.
Mr. Chernetsky, what's the update on that from Mrs. Dixon?
We are actively researching that. I know the deputy manager has been online and trying to locate things.
Okay.
But
Because-
we will get that out.
Because Ron Sanisek specifically said it had to be brick, and like I said,
We
Dennis
recall you
Stinger said it
Yep.
didn't.
Okay.
Okay, Memorial Drive. There was a court order, if I remember, when the last administration was here, there was a court order that said that those streets of Pine Needle or Rosebud had to remain opened.
Only if there was no other access point. Now that we've created another
Okay.
access point, those roads can be closed, and we've already made that as a policy decision.
Okay. I'd still appreciate you getting a copy of the court order before you
We have
go
it.
and close roads to make sure that that we're not violating a order of the court.
Yeah, Mr. Gannon, Mr. Chernetsky, please tell me we've done our due diligence on this, right? We've looked at all this, we're able to close this road? We're able to close these roads? Well, I'm asking you rhetorically, because I know we've gone over it. More than a year ago, we had an in-depth policy memorandum from you, and we got your legal opinion that we had the jurisdiction to do this. That hasn't changed,
According
has
to the
it?
court order, that's fine. You've read the court order.
According to the law, according to Gannon, it's fine.
Okay, I want a copy of the court, can you provide me with a copy of the court order? It's a public document, please.
The attorney at that time.
Okay, well, I would like a copy of the court order. And it just so happened, my last comment regarding Coles is I think the other door in Coles should be also a handicap door. It's not fair to make somebody that's handicapped walk across the parking lot if they're severely handicapped and have severe pain and whatever, whether they use a walker or a wheelchair or whatever, it's not fair to make them walk across the parking lot. And I brought that up to Coles to make them make both doors handicapped, accessible. Not make them walk, and to make them walk across the door to a door that you actually have to pull open because you can't get it opened. That's my only remaining comment on Coles.
Okay, thank you.
And there are no chairs in the store for a handicapped person to sit on, should they have to.
You must like Kohl's.
No, I don't care, it's just not fair. Every other store around here has the handicap accessible motorized carts. Coles is the only one on Route 9 that does not. And I take issue with that because I feel it's an ADA problem. The whole thing may be an ADA problem.
Okay, thank
And
you.
they're not good neighbors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. John Costigan, you're up, Mr. Costigan. Welcome, Mr. Costigan. When you come up, if you just give us the inventory of what it is you'd like to, Jesus, Colleen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening,
John
Mr.
Costigan, 214 Birds Hill Road. Actually, it's just one quick question. I thought I wasn't going to get a chance on the zoning, but I see that we'll have a hearings after that.
Oh, yeah.
That's why, and I was too quick not to put my name. The one thing I wanted to ask is, I think it was 2 years ago, at a master plan meeting, I had asked the chair at the time, was Mrs. Smith, how we got a builder's acre in this town.
It's going away.
Okay. And then, no one was sure, but it was around 1989, but then Mr. Newcomb was kind enough to say it could be changed like...
Part of the new
very
master
easily.
plan actually is going to do that.
Okay. I'm just saying, maybe it could have been changed a while ago, but anyway, I worry. But it's probably been 2 years, and that builder's acre, you know, you put a few of them together and you got an extra more than what you want. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Costigan. Mr. Marks, come on.